So our other special guest this evening is Tom van Arman. Tom, welcome to So Damn Local. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Anna.
And you and I go back to our volunteering days at the John Adams Institute. That's how we met. And you got to talking about everything that you were doing outside of that volunteer experience. And I'm just so amazed. So for our viewers out there, can you just give us a little bit of background about yourself, what brought you to Amsterdam? At one point, you mentioned that you were an architect and how that all changed and brought you to where you are now.
Right. Yeah, I started in the Green Mountains of Vermont, and I always wanted, since the age of 10, 11, 12, I always wanted to be an architect and drawing floor plans and whatever. And then so to get my bachelor's degree, I went to Boston, and then from Boston, I decided I love cities, and I went to London. And then from London, I got a really amazing perspective, overview of all the best cities and the worst cities. Went to Rio, looking at favelas and how to fix favelas. And but of all the cities that I had came across, I thought that Amsterdam was one of the coolest, and I wanted to learn from the Dutch on how to make great livable cities. And so I moved here in 2000, 16 years ago already.
Wow.
So it's quite a bit dating myself now, but. And I was working for some really radical firms, doing some really groundbreaking stuff. But then all of a sudden, in 2007, 2008, just before the elections, the whole economic system fell apart. And so the whole financial crisis went into overdrive in October, where the Bear Stearns, the Goldman Sachs, and the Bernie Madoffs were making off with all of our money. And at that point, the bank stopped loaning money for development, no designers. And so very shortly, within about a year after the crisis started, 50% of all the design firms in the Netherlands shut their doors. And so we were out on the street scratching our heads, what do we do now, kind of thing.
Right.
And luckily, Steve Jobs, at the same time, entered the stage and introduced everybody to these things. And I said, hang on a second, what happens if these things are available to all the citizens in the cities? Then we have whole new insights and whole new tools to use to make better decisions about how we plan more livable cities.
And our location tonight, as we mentioned to the viewers, is the Amsterdam Smart City Experience Lab, which is also connected to a lot of these initiatives, things that you're doing. Can you give us, before we go into that, broad brushstrokes about Amsterdam, the startup ecosystem, as you've referred to it, which I think is a great term in a nutshell, because Amsterdam was ranked number 5 of the best places in the world for startups. Is that still true? Can you just give us an idea?
Yeah, it's a very competitive positioning and jockeying for especially in Europe, all of the cities trying to either promote themselves and secure positions as the number 1 livable city, or the number 1 startup city, or the number 1 smart city. A lot of these kinds of these statuses go back to the whole branding of the cities, and the economic boards are trying to promote the cities to attract the talent to come here and do some great stuff. So last year, this year, Amsterdam won the Innovation Capital Award as €1 million funding to do some really, really great stuff for young startups, kind of thing. But the smart city story is something that's been going on for over 5 years now, and it's basically the government trying to use basically trying to create a kind of a fertile ground for a lot of innovation to deal with some really complicated problems, whether that's in government, whether it's education, whether it's energy, whether it's you name it. And so right now there's for the last several years, they've been compiling lots of data, right? So you have like 12,000 data sets divided by 32 different departments in the city. And what they're trying to do is make it free, make it accessible, make it available. And in this space that you see here, they're all on exhibit, not just data, but we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about mobility, we're talking about new ways of doing things better, leaner, faster. And Amsterdam is a perfect kind of laboratory for experimentation.
Can you give our viewers an example of one of those initiatives that you think is the most successful, or one perhaps that you've been directly involved with?
Yeah, I mean, well, coincidentally, Glimworm, here we are in the Marineterrein, the old marine base. It's been kind of behind this brick wall for decades. And it's opened up to us new campus for innovation. And Glimworm has been one of those pioneers, always pushing for innovation. So what they've done is in the IoT Living Lab is not only a community but also technology. And the city piloted for the first time an iBeacon infrastructure. So in other words, residents and tourists can actually get information in a public space about points of interest or any of information. And so this was the first investment any government had ever made in this new technology called beacons. And beacons are just kind of triggers to, you get a vibration in your phone and you get information about that space or that's useful or valuable or help you make decisions to move about the city more effectively. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new initiatives, early stage, late stage. They're already scaling. Some are making money. Some of they're making a difference.
And last spring, actually took a group of students around the city on a startup tour of Amsterdam, which was just fascinating. There were places that I had no idea existed, and all these things going on that I had no idea were going on. So it's just, I think in that sense, an amazing city that if you look at.
Yeah, everything's at your fingertips. I mean, just if you keep walking further towards Central Station from this side, you're gonna find a local brewery. Mm-hmm. Then you're gonna find some bio restaurants, some green IT. You're gonna find some biohacking going on further up, and then you get into. Then you get into the Vodafone areas and so there's so much within like every 3 minutes you're going to be tripping over some sort of some really, really clever company doing some really, really awesome stuff.
And can you tell us more about your own initiatives? Tapp, for example, and Amsterdam.
Tapp was something I wanted to start in 2010. I wanted to kind of explore this trend of app making, so making smart apps for smart cities that tackle real problems. And the first few apps that I've made are dealing with waste and how we think about waste. I think anybody who lives in Amsterdam sees how waste, like the foul and things like that, are visible. Things that we see every day on the street, and how we can automate that removal process, saving the city money. And when you save city money, they promote you. So most of the thing about app design these days is getting as many users as possible to use your app. And when you have the whole city behind you in the papers and the websites, and even on the sides of the trash trucks that are promoting app as mobile billboards, those are techniques that entrepreneurs and app makers need to start thinking about. And I like that space of working with the governments and especially cities to tackle problems. Another one I'm doing in Chile right now is tackling the local labor situation. So these people may not have a car, they may not have a television or PC, maybe don't have a roof on their house, but they all have smartphones now. And so we're helping the government make them more visible. When they're more visible, they're more profitable. And now, recently I'm doing more, not just apps with APIs. And so APIs are these new interfaces that connect things to new things. And so working with QB, and Eneco has a smart thermostat right now that not only just visualize the energy consumption, but start connecting that thing in your home to your watch or to other appliances, to your car, to the solar panels, to everything. And so I'm just trying to find more and more ways to make cities more inhabitable, because if you can solve that problem, you're going to be making the whole world more livable, because the trend is clear that, by 2050, 60 to 70% of the world will be living in cities. And so how do we start preparing for that? And for me, it's innovation is here. The 3D printing is here. Automated driving is here. Drones are here. Big data is here. VR, AR, robotics is here. Everything is coming, and I want to transition now into helping cities prepare for that disruption. You see what happens to cities when the Uber hits the city, or when Airbnb hits the city. It's so disruptive, and the governments are usually about 5 to 10 years behind how to deal with that. And that's a space that I like working in now.
Do you see the startup community as a short-lived trend? Or you mentioned, by the year 2050,
Yeah.
70%.
Yeah, we'll be living in cities.
Well,
I mean, to answer that question, not at all. I think, I think that we're all the millennial generation, my generation, X generation. We're all entrepreneurs now. We know how. We don't go to university and work for 30, 40 years and retire anymore. We're doing multiple jobs. And now it's not even multiple jobs, but it's starting your own job, carving out your own space and claiming your own territory and making money from the things you enjoy doing. With today's technology, you're allowed to do lots of rapid prototyping, iterations of the products or services that you're making. And so I think the 9-to-5 job is about to go extinct, and quite the opposite. I think with a laptop and a toothbrush, you can conquer the world, kind of thing. So. In the developing countries, it's much more of a challenge, but I'm actually more optimistic in the developing countries because they're always borrowing our ideas, our technology, our infrastructure. So they get to skip generations where we in the West have to be pioneers and break that new ground. And the developing countries get to kind of borrow all those kinds of success stories.
And for our viewers out there, are there any upcoming events that they should know about or any ways they can get involved in the startup community?
Yeah, you have the GoTo conference. You have the Next Web is a big one last year, and the Vesta Park. There was 20,000 people for 2 days, and those are big venues. You also had the Startup Fest, which was organized by Neely Cruz, and you had Tim Cook here. And all these kinds of celebrities. And so what they're trying to do with these events is attract international companies to move here, like Tesla's here, and they're all kind of making decisions about moving here because the ecosystem is so perfect and so fertile to attract talent. Universities are here for the knowledge, and super active meetup community as we've been talking about. So it's a perfect kind of playground. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. And for the viewers out there that want to know more, be sure to check out at Amsterdam when you're with Twitter, and at Tom van Arman to see his posts as well, and Tapp, that's TAPP.nl. And thank you so much, Tom, for hosting us today here in the Smart City Experience Lab and for talking to us about the startup ecosystem of Amsterdam.
My pleasure, Hannah.
Thanks.
Thank you.